How is it going, ladies and gentlemen? If you're returning to Sports Break, welcome back. It's been quite the hiatus. Not since December 2019 have we recorded an episode. That was back in the old Trent Radio days in Peterborough. Shout out to Trent Radio. But if you're new to Sports Break, as you should be, welcome aboard. My name is James Tubb. I am a journalism student in my fourth year. I am now at Loyalist College, studying to become the next great sports journalist. I don't know, whoever you think of, or the next great sports broadcaster you think of. Doug Emmerich, who just retired, Vin Scully, Bob Cole, all these guys who have moved on from the sports broadcasting world. They need someone to fill their shoes. James Tubb is the next guy. The last time we talked, there was a lot has happened since the last time we talked that we could never have imagined. Whether that was the Dodgers finally winning the World Series, the Tampa Bay Lightning finally winning their Stanley Cup. A lot has happened in the sports world, and that's not even including the pandemic. We finally just got over the election. Not even over it. We finally got the results of the U.S. election. We're going to bring it back to where we always do. That's Toronto. How can you not? It's the hub of sports in Canada. For everyone outside of Toronto and non-Toronto fans, biggest eye roll ever with that. But the Toronto Blue Jays this season, I'm going to say shocked the world, kind of. I understand it was in extended playoffs. There was more teams this year than there have been in almost ever make the playoffs. And the Blue Jays did. They snuck in. They lost to the Tampa Bay Rays pretty convincingly in 2 games. Of course, Game 1 was highlighted by Matt Shoemaker being pulled out of the game too early by manager Charlie Montoya, only foreshadowing to the World Series with Kevin Cash pulling Blake Snell out of the game early. Both Tampa Bay Ray guys, kind of correlates there. Something to think about. And then Game 2, Hyunjin Ryu just didn't have it. I don't know if he was hurt. They haven't really said on that, but kind of a crappy ending to a good Blue Jays season. But something to build off of for the Toronto Blue Jays, who really weren't supposed to make the playoffs, and now can add that to their playoff records. I don't know how you add that, though. Is it a play-in? They made the play-ins, or they made the playoffs? They made the postseason, I guess. But what banner do you hang up? Or do you even hang a banner in the Rogers Center? Not that we'll see it. I don't know when the Blue Jays will be back in Rogers Center. It sounds like for this upcoming 2021 season that there's a good chance they'll probably play in Buffalo again or somewhere in the States. I know that MLB and the Blue Jays, of course, want to be back in Toronto. But I just don't know how that's going to happen. I just can't see it happening at all. And, I think they're going to be in Buffalo again. And the Raptors are probably going to play in the States. And the Leafs, they're probably going to play a Canadian division because they can, because they're not the only Canadian team in the sports league. But that's the Blue Jays and Raptors' benefit and demise, is being the only Canadian team in their league. But with the Blue Jays, this is it's kind of overblown and out of proportion, but this is a major offseason for the Blue Jays. They can vastly improve their team or stay where they are. They have the guys that they could roll out the season right now. They've got their 5 starters, Hyunjin Ryu. Tanner Roark's got 1 more year in his contract. They just re-signed Robbie Ray. We'll get to that. Trent Thornton's coming off of an arm injury, and Nate Pearson is coming off of an arm injury. Of course, Nate Pearson, the top prospect in the Blue Jays organization. A lot of people want to see what he can do under a full season and healthy, and I think this would be an amazing time to find out in the 2021 season after following the Blue Jays making the playoffs. They've got their catchers. They've got Danny Jansen, Reese McGuire, Alejandro Kirk has made an appearance at the end of the season and kind of taken the Blue Jays over by storm. You've got your infield, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Rowdy Tellez, Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette. Don't know if Travis Shaw is going to return. Joe Panik's a free agent. They're probably not going to bring him back. Who are they going to fill his spot? They have a team. They have their team. Well, obviously they have a team. They have their team. They've got the outfield, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Randall Grichuk, Teoscar Hernandez. They've got Jonathan Davis. They've got Derek Fisher. They have the outfield depth. They have depth. It's not quality, but they have depth, and they have a team. And I don't know if I said Teoscar Hernandez or not, but he's there as well, of course. Silver Slugger in right field for the Blue Jays. Didn't expect that. Right up there with Hyunjin Ryu's Cy Young Award. And we expected the Charlie Montoya Manager of the Year nomination. Don't know if he's going to get it. It's probably going to go to Kevin Cash, who, of course, made that mistake in the World Series. I'll call it a mistake. Probably should have left Snell in, but when you commit to analytics, you have to commit, right? And that's that time where there's a lot of people saying analytics get them out of sports. They help a lot, and they help teams produce better results on the field. And I don't think you should get rid of them, but that eye test really, in the World Series, it really proved that you kind of need that eye test in there with the analytics results. And I think we're going to see a step back in baseball from analytics, and I think it's only going to get worse. And I think this is perfectly in line with the third nomination for that Manager of the Year, who was Rick Renteria, who was their former manager, was nominated for Manager of the Year and fired for Tony La Russa, who is old in the nicest way of putting it. His last managerial stint with the team was in 1986. For those of you back home, that's 20 plus 4. No. For those of you back home, that's 34 years ago. That's a long time. There's players on his team that weren't even born the last time he managed in the major leagues. But yeah, bring him into baseball when it's more analytical than ever. And he has been very vocal. He doesn't like bat flips. He doesn't like showmanship. And in today's baseball, and there's nothing wrong with this, I think it's amazing. In today's baseball, where it is dying, and you can't put it any other way, today's baseball is dying because they can't market themselves. They've done a terrible job at that. When baseball players try to market themselves, like Trevor Bauer, MLB says, "Yeah, you can't use our logo or any team logos. You can't." They take half a step forward and 5 steps back. It just makes no sense. And the White Sox, who have amazing personalities on the team with rookie Luis Robert, outfielder Eloy Jimenez, and shortstop Tim Anderson. Amazing personalities that play the game well, play the game the right way, in my opinion, and have fun doing it. They flip bats, they yell and scream, they have fun. It's a kid's game. Always have to come back to that. They have fun, and people hate it. Tony La Russa is one of them, and it's interesting to see how he's going to manage that team. But back to the important team, the most important team, the Toronto Blue Jays. This offseason, as much as people want to play it up or don't, is very critical to the next couple years with this young core of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, and I include Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Danny Jansen in that. They are part of that young core. Without a solid, it's the Yankee method. You build from the catcher forward. So you want a good catcher, you want an amazing shortstop, and then you want an amazing center fielder. Right now, they've got Bo Bichette, who can play shortstop. I don't know long term. We'll talk about that. They've got Biggio, who can play second base or anywhere, well, pretty much anywhere. They haven't tried him at shortstop yet, but he could become your center fielder. They've got Vlad, who I don't know where he plays into this. Either it's back at third or at first, DH. And then you have Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who so far has only played left field, but I think could maybe make his way into center field. I don't know why not. But they've done a good job at getting the young core. Now they need the team to surround them. If you look at the Dodgers and the amount of homegrown players that they've had and the reclamation projects, I'll call them, that they've had to turn around and become the World Series champions, it's a lot. They have their drafted guys, of course, Clayton Kershaw, Kenley Jansen, Corey Seager, Max Muncy, Cody Bellinger, Jock Peterson, Enrique Hernandez, the list goes on. Kevin Lux, Will Smith, their new catcher, Austin Barnes, their other catcher. The list goes on. And it wasn't until they brought in Mookie Betts, the big fish, that they could finally win the World Series. It took that much. And they had all this amazing talent. Look at the last time they were in the World Series against the Boston Red Sox. They had all the amazing talent. They had a better starting rotation. They had Hyun-Jin Ryu in that rotation, Kenta Maeda. But they didn't have that one extra star that you need, that one extra oomph that they got in Mookie Betts that helped them win that World Series that they've been chasing since 1989. Right, yeah. And that's where the Blue Jays currently sit, is do you get that big fish now in this offseason when you can, or do you kick the can down the road and go for next year and kind of build around this young core a little bit more? because that's what they did last offseason. They got a big fish. They didn't get the big fish with Garrett Cole, but they got a nice size pickerel in Hyunjin Ryu, who can headline the rotation in a World Series winning rotation. I think he's a second starter, and that's kind of been the analysis coming everywhere, is that he's a good number 2 guy. I wouldn't want him number 1, but number 2. So now you build from there. Who are you going to put 1? Well, you're hoping Nate Pearson grows into that, but there's the key word, that he grows into that. Nate Pearson last year, he had a very good season, his first year in the majors. Had an elbow injury, or a forearm injury, I should say, that kind of kept him out of the last little bit and put him in the playoffs only as a reliever. But he only threw 18 innings last year, had a 6 ERA, which isn't great, but it isn't reflective, I would say, of what his season was. In his 18 innings, he had 16 strikeouts, right? So he's got that electric arm. He's got the fastball, no problem. He's got the changeup, no problem. I think it was a bit of control and nerves. Honestly, I think it was mostly nerves from Nate Pearson. Because the 24-year-old did perform. He did a good job in a Blue Jays roster or uniform, and now we just need to see him grow more. And I think if you slot him in there in the Blue Jays rotation in the 3-4 hole, I think he can have a year and eventually move his way up. I think if he can keep performing, he's about 2 years away, 2 to 3, from being considered the ace. If he keeps going on the path to the Blue Jays, and the rest of the baseball world thinks he can, and because they do, they have him ranked very high. He was the Blue Jays' number 1 prospect according to everyone, and he was the 8th overall prospect in according to Fangraphs in the major leagues, and a lot of different organizations had him up there. So if you're the Blue Jays, you're like, well, do we fill that 1 hole now, or do we let Nate Pearson take it over? And that's a valuable question, and they have that everywhere, at every position. There's no real position on the Toronto Blue Jays right now that is cemented. You could say outfield with Lourdes Gurriel, Grichuk, and Teoscar Hernandez. Yes, they have good outfielders, but I don't know if they're championship caliber. You look at the Dodgers. Again, we're always going to go back to the Dodgers because they just won. Mookie Betts in right field, arguably one of the greatest, or the best players in baseball right now. Don't bring up the greatest. Talking about any player, you get in trouble. Center field, they have Cody Bellinger, who can play almost every position and plays it at an elite Gold Glove, Silver Slugger level. Left field, they had the rotation of Jock Peterson, A.J. Pollock, Enrique Hernandez, Chris Taylor even slotted in there. They kind of filled left field here and there whenever they could. But they had their guys in Cody Bellinger and Mookie Betts. And if you're the Blue Jays, you're thinking, is Teoscar Hernandez any of those guys? Can he step in? Well, we saw last season, Teoscar had an amazing season, earned himself the Silver Slugger for right fielders in the American League. And he hit 16 home runs in 50 games and had batted .289. That's pretty good. That's like a good season. Projected over a full 162. I don't know what that means or what that would be, but it'd be good. That'd be, well, looking here actually, if they said he played 114 games, he'd have 31 home runs. And who says no to a 30 home run guy, right? So do you build around Teoscar, or Lourdes Gurriel Jr. looks pretty good in left field. He makes those flashy catches and he can hit the ball. He goes on his hot streaks. Or there's Randall Grichuk, and you've got him signed long term. But what do you do there, And there's a lot of big decisions there. And yeah, I think people have downplayed it, saying that this offseason isn't big for the Toronto Blue Jays. And I'm going to say I don't think it could be big enough. This is a major offseason for the Toronto Blue Jays if they want to start to contend. We see Baltimore is still 3 to 4 to 5, 6 maybe years away from contending. Boston is a couple years away from contending again. They have a good team, but they traded away Mookie Betts. Chris Sale's coming off an elbow injury. Tommy John, not even just an elbow injury. And they have a good team, but I don't know if it's championship caliber anymore. And then Tampa Bay, are they going to spend money? That's the big question. If Tampa Bay spends money, then they might be the best team in the division. They probably are the best team in the division anyways. And then you look at the Yankees. If the Yankees don't improve a lot this offseason, the Yankees don't scare me anymore. They have a good lineup. They have Aaron Judge. They've got Giancarlo Stanton. But then, like Aaron Hicks, I guess, Gary Sanchez is no longer the catcher he ever was, and there's a good chance they might not even re-sign him. That's the biggest news coming out of the MLB, or some of the biggest news coming out is they might not re-sign Gary Sanchez. And he was a big part of their lineup when they contended there in 2017 and lost to the Houston Astros. Do you hear that, trash can? But yeah, this Yankees team, they've got their guy in Garrett Cole. Luis Severino, will he ever come back for injury? We don't know. Masahiro Tanaka is a free agent. And we're going to look at free agents here that the Blue Jays should sign, in my opinion, or could sign. And the one name that I didn't put on the list is Masahiro Tanaka. And not because I wouldn't want him on the Blue Jays. I think he'd be a phenomenal arm on the Toronto Blue Jays. He does well at limiting runs, keeps the ball on the ground, and can strike guys out. I think he's going to sign with the Yankees. I can't see them moving on from him. He's their guy. This is going to sound like it's a thing with international players like that, from Japanese players, I guess is the easiest way of saying it, and any players like that. They like to stay where they were. I mean, I'm contradicting myself with Hyunjin Ryu, but usually they stay. Ichiro kind of moved around, but Ichiro was a bigger personality. From what I've heard about Masahiro Tanaka, which is the easier way of saying it, is he would like to stay in New York. And I think that's the perfect opportunity for him. Might as well. Good for him, right? I just don't see him coming to Toronto. I know a lot of fans and a lot of analysts want him in Toronto. I don't think it's going to happen. The Blue Jays have their own free agents to look at right now. They have Matt Shoemaker, who in 2 years he's been hurt a lot and hasn't really performed a lot for the Blue Jays. I mean, he was dealing in Game 1 of the whatever wild card series they're calling it this year and was pulled early after 2 innings. The Red Sox are after him. Last year he made $4.2 million. I don't know what the Blue Jays could offer him or are gonna offer him. Like, their rotation right now is, you've got Hyunjin Ryu, Nate Pearson, Tanner Roark's under contract. Do you keep him around? And you signed Robbie Ray. So there's 3 arms right there. Do you bring back Matt Shoemaker to fill that role? He had a 4.71 ERA in 28 innings. Is he worth it to bring back? Like, he can fill out the bottom of the rotation, but maybe that's what Tanner Roark's for. That's what I think, at least, because he's that 4th arm. And he really didn't perform at all well last season. And then you have Taijuan Walker, who came to the Blue Jays in 26 innings. He had a 1.37 ERA. He had a 2.70 in the entire season between Toronto and Seattle. So what do you do? Like, do you bring back those 2 guys? There's your 5 guys. You got Hyunjin Ryu, Matt Shoemaker, Nate Pearson, Taijuan Walker, Tanner Roark. That's a very league average pitching rotation. That'll keep you, you'll be 15. You'll be the 15th, maybe the 20th best rotation in the league. Is that what you want? Can you win the playoffs with that? We haven't seen that in years, where a team with very little starting pitching can win the World Series, let alone a couple rounds. So you need to improve that. So if you looked at free agency, there's the big guy in Trevor Bauer, who 1.73 ERA, 73 innings pitched, 100 strikeouts. Woof. What a guy. What an ace that the Blue Jays could need. Slots in right there above Hyunjin Ryu. Amazing in Toronto. I'll call him a good personality. I really like Trevor Bauer as a person, and I think he would do a good job in Toronto to build the game in Canada more than it is. That's a question with a lot of teams is, do you want Trevor Bauer the person? And some people don't, and that's, you know what? That's too bad for them, because Trevor Bauer will do a lot for whatever team signs him. The one thing with Trevor Bauer, he does not want more than a 1-year contract. So if you're Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro, are you going to sign Trevor Bauer, who is probably going to be the NL Cy Young winner, and looked phenomenal, but has his ups and downs. He's only started to perform the last couple of years. Do you project he's going to stay at that level? And he's 29. So he's going to turn 30, actually, by the time you get him next season, because his birthday's in January. Do you sign him to that 1-year deal? And if it is, it's got to be like $30 million, because he's worth it right now. So are you going to pay a guy for 1 year $30 million? Or are you somehow going to be the team that convinces Trevor Bauer, the guy who's the most opinionated guy in baseball, that he should sign more than a 1-year deal with you because you're special? I don't know if the Blue Jays would want to do that. I think they should. I think there's going to be 29 other teams, including the Cincinnati Reds, his current team or former team, however you consider it, that are going to make a run for him. And if you're the Blue Jays, who right now it seems are one of the only teams who kind of made money last season. They lost money obviously, but with Rogers Communications being the owner, they still made some money, right? Because people still have to use their phones. It's not their sole income. This baseball team here, they still made money and they can spend it. They're one of the few between them and the New York Mets with their new owner Steve Cohen, who didn't lose any money last season because he didn't have to invest any. They could spend big time, and nothing bigger than Trevor Bauer, who would solidify the rotation. Maybe you sign him to a 1 year with a player option or something, right? So he sticks around on his own terms. But I think that's the big fish you have to. If you're gonna go, if you say like the Blue Jays are that they're gonna go big fish hunting, get the biggest fish. That's Trevor Bauer. Solidifies the rotation. Well, really does a good job on the rotation. So then you're looking at Trevor Bauer, Hyunjin Ryu, 3-hole. Maybe you're putting in Nate Pearson there, and then you've got Robbie Ray, and then you've got your choice between Tanner Roark. You've got rookies galore when it comes to the starting rotation that you can choose from. Whether that's Ryan Barucki, you can stretch him out. Julian Merriweather, Thomas Hatch, Anthony Kay. If you don't like Thomas Roark, which I'm not a big fan of, I think he's past his prime here in Toronto. Only here 1 year, but I think it's time to move on from the Tanner Roark project. They've got him one more year at $12 million, I believe. That can be bought out or moved somewhere. Even in a time where teams don't want to spend money, if you send them a prospect that way, you can move on from the Tanner Roark contract. And I think that's what the Blue Jays need to do. Look at me here, spending the prospects that the Blue Jays need to be good. But we will. We're going to make some trades later here. But back to free. Trevor Bauer's the signing. And if you want to move on from him, you can get him and maybe somebody else, whether that's James Paxton from the New York Yankees, Kevin Gausman from the Giants, formerly of the Orioles, you remember him from there, or Jake Odorizzi from the Minnesota Twins. You could get both. Why not? Now, you're going to leave your position player ends. It depends on how much money Toronto really wants to spend. Paxton, the one issue, he probably going to have to sign him somewhere between $15 to $20 million. And you're going to have to give him 2 to 3 years. The biggest problem there is you're going to have to outprice the New York Yankees. And this is a Yankees team that has lost in the playoffs now with this core since 2017. That's 3 years, according to my math. They're desperate right now. And they made that very clear with the Garrett Cole signing last offseason. And I think they're going to continue that this year. And good luck outpricing them, whether that comes to James Paxton, Masahiro Tanaka, or DJ LeMahieu. They want their guys back, to the most part. And you're going to have to offer some big money to get them out of New York. Or maybe the guys just want out of New York, right? That's out of New York's control then. But if you want to strip somebody from New York, take off the pinstripes, you're going to have to pay them big money. That's why I think for the Blue Jays, you go after a guy like Trevor Bauer. You get him. You've got your 1-2. And then maybe you backstep and you look at this pitcher-less market. And you get some reclamation projects. That's how I would approach it. And there's good pitchers out there. Chris Archer, who the Blue Jays were always tied to when he was with Tampa Bay. Pittsburgh declined his option on Halloween. Kind of spooky if you're Chris Archer. Didn't pitch at all really last season. He was hurt. Well, didn't pitch at all. There's no stats. But in 2019, he had almost 120 innings. He had a 5.19 ERA and 143 strikeouts. You know, maybe you pay the guy $5 to $10 million over 3 years, like $5 million per. Like a 3-year, $15 million contract, or a 3-year, $25. You know, something in that line, something not too expensive. But you let Pete Walker do his magic. It worked well with Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray looks a lot better than he did coming from Arizona. You let Pete Walker do his magic, and you see where he can take Chris Archer, who at one time was phenomenal. He had flames coming out of his arms, amazing breaking stuff. He reminds a lot of like Tyler Glasnow, with the Tampa Bay Rays. We watched him perform in the World Series. He kind of squandered it, but you know, nerves, right? Or he just didn't have it that night. It seems like with Glasnow. But Chris Archer looks good, or has looked good. And I think if they could get him back to himself, where he's maybe a 3 ERA guy, and a nice 3-hole in that rotation, that'd be amazing. Or another guy who used to be a number one is Corey Kluber with the Texas Rangers. Traded there last season. They declined his $18 million option on the 29th of October. Didn't pitch at all last season. He pitched 1 inning, I believe, and then got hurt. Combined the last 2 seasons, he's only pitched 36 innings. He's got a 5.65 ERA. This is a guy that you might have to pay for the big name. So you're not going to get him for $5 million. You might have to pay 10 for a guy like this. He's got a big name. And first you find out if the injury problem is fixed or is fixable. And then again, you let Pete Walker do his magic. This is a guy who dominated baseball for, I want to say, 3-4 years. And was phenomenal in that World Series in 2016, was just overused. And that's why he didn't succeed. And I wonder if this is why we're starting to see Corey Kluber still hurt 2 years in a row. Is that in 16-17, he was worked. And I just think you can only do 15 even. Sorry, that's 3 years. I think you can only do so much of that, and then it wears on pitchers. We're seeing that on Madison Bumgarner right now. Maybe I'm just blowing people's minds here in baseball, but we've seen that now with Kluber and Bumgarner. You work these guys hard in the postseason, and it doesn't hurt them right away. They can pitch the next season, but down the road, those are hard innings and hard pitches, and it wears on them, and eventually maybe it shortens the career a bit. That was the thing always with Clayton Kershaw, is he can perform in the regular season, can't perform in the playoffs. Was he overused? I think Kershaw was. We're getting away from the Blue Jays, but it's Kershaw, so it's Kershaw. Was overused in the playoffs a lot by him. Don Mattingly, Mr. Yankee. And even Dave Roberts would put him in relief, and it's like, that's Kershaw. Like, I understand you want the outs, and you don't trust the bullpen that you have. That's not on Kershaw. Like, you put him in a bad situation, he performed as well as he could, and that's the result you got. Like, at some point, the accountability is on the player, and that's where the only time I put accountability on the player like that is in starts. A starting pitcher is expected to perform at his best when he is at his peak rest, and everyone's different. Trevor Bauer is a guy that can apparently pitch on 4 days rest, and he proved it this year with the Reds. Kershaw maybe needs 5. Maybe as he gets older, he needs 6. And you know what? That's the athlete. They know their body. If they have a bad day or can't perform on their optimal rest, then the blame is on them. But if you're going to put him in a bad spot, in a bad situation, 7th inning, 2 guys on, and he pitched 2-3 days ago, how can you expect him to be perfect? You can't, right? He's not in a perfect situation. You can't expect him to be perfect. Before you start typing away, saying he's a professional athlete, that's his job. If you were put in a bad situation in your job and you failed, why should anyone be upset at you, right? Right. I understand they make millions, but look at it. They're getting screwed. All right, we're not going to get into that. We're getting into the Blue Jays, another guy, Mike Foltynewicz with the Atlanta Braves, kind of fell off last season. In 3 innings last year, he had a 16 ERA. You heard me, 16. 2019, he had a 4.5 ERA with 117 innings. So it's a young guy with the Braves who looked good. I mean, they've got Kyle Wright and they've got Colby Allard, and Ian Anderson actually performed this year in the playoffs. But they've got their young guys. They usually do really well drafting, starting pitching. That's why I've included him here for Toronto to sign, and I think he would do a very good job in Toronto. But yeah, it's another guy. Those 3 guys, Foltynewicz, Archer, and Kluber. You can get them a lot cheaper than maybe other guys like Paxton, Kevin Gausman, or Jake Odorizzi. But they're not as guaranteed. You're going to need Pete Walker and the health gods, we'll call it, to make them healthy, and Pete Walker to maybe help them get back to normal and as close to as elite as they once were, or as like high performing. Right? It's going to take some time for those guys. Like Corey Kluber, it might take a year off or something like that to get his arm and his body back to health to the point where he can pitch again, because he hasn't looked like himself in a long time. And that is a guy who Toronto would need. And if not, they need to sign somebody. You could trade. I don't think they're at the point right now where they should trade for a big name starter when you can get a guy like Trevor Bauer. And essentially, if you can commit him long time, you are set pretty well for the future. But yeah, I think that's the biggest mindset that the Blue Jays need to have, is we need to spend big this year, or we're not going to do it. Right? You just can't contend with the rotation that they have right now. And I think they found that out in this year's playoffs when they were forced to go Matt Shoemaker and then the bullpen and then Hyunjin Ryu, right? And then Hyunjin Ryu failed, and they sat at home and watched the Tampa Bay Rays lose in the World Series, right? So their bullpen last year, just moving back from the rotation, looked good. At the start, rocky, scary. Looked to be the downfall of the Toronto Blue Jays when the season was being projected. Of course, they had Ken Giles slotted in as their closer, who didn't really get through the season. Had to go out with Tommy John and missed a lot. I think he didn't have many innings pitched last year. He had 3.2 innings pitched. Didn't look like himself. He stayed in one outing and kept throwing pitches and kept shuddering, and it's like, uh-oh, that's not good. And, yeah, it wasn't good. And he had to get Tommy John. And there's a lot of relievers who are right now free agents who had to get Tommy John. I'm looking at Dave Robertson from Philadelphia and Tommy Canley with the New York Yankees. Both had to leave and got hurt, had to leave with Tommy John. And I'm kind of thinking the idea around them would be good pickups to add, and you stash them. We saw that with Michael Pineda in the Minnesota Twins. You sign him to a 2-year deal, maybe 3 years, and you pay them for the 1 year that they're out with Tommy John. And it sucks, right? You're paying this guy, he's not even going to play for you, but you're paying him for the next year. And I think that's what they should do kind of with Ken Giles. I mean, if you think this guy can pitch again after Tommy John, which that's so hard to predict, but if you like the guy and you think he could perform after that, you sign him. So whether that's Ken Giles, who has familiarity with the Toronto Blue Jays and their medical staff and their organization, maybe he wants to stay. You go after Tommy Canley with the Yankees. Again, you're going to have to outprice New York, who probably wants to keep their guy around who's performed. Tommy Canley is an amazing reliever. 2019, his numbers didn't really show it. He had a 3.67 ERA, but he has been a shutdown guy in New York for a long time. Kind of underrated in New York, behind guys like Aroldis Chapman, Zach Britton, and Chad Green, Adam Ottavino as well. But Tommy Canley has looked good and would be, again, that guy you sign. He's hurt right now. You give him a year, and he comes back and he can perform maybe a year later, or he doesn't, and you kick him out the door, right? You just cut ties and move on. But there's big names right now on the free agency. Brad Hand was optioned and released by the Cleveland Indians. A nice lefty arm. Alex Colomb with the Chicago White Sox, and Blake Trinan, who just won the World Series with the Dodgers, former of the Oakland Athletics. They look to be big arms out of the pen that could sign. But the biggest arm is Liam Hendriks, the former Toronto Blue Jay, because of course it's a former Toronto Blue Jay that is on top of the free agent market for relief pitchers. And he looked amazing. He had a 1.78 ERA across 25 innings, 37 strikeouts, and 14 saves. Top closer last year, easily going to make $15 to $20 million this offseason. Even as teams struggle to penny pinch and spend as little as possible, ever since the Kansas City Royals won the World Series in 2015, there has been an obsession with the bullpen. And it's not wrong, right? Like, your starter can only go so long. In the playoffs, you want your bullpen to take over the last 3 to 4 innings of the game. Now, with the new rules of each pitcher must face 3 batters, the new rule, that's changed it. But the bullpen still matters a lot. You look at the Dodgers; they almost didn't have a bullpen, and they almost lost. Tampa, that was almost the entire reason they won, was their bullpen. I mean, it's the reason they lost with Blake's now being pulled. But, we got to bring that up all the time. But if you're the Blue Jays, you don't have a closer right now. I mean, you had guys in Jordan Romano, Anthony Bass, who will remain. Anthony Bass is a free agent who the Blue Jays would need to sign. But a guy like Jordan Romano, before he was hurt, he looked good. Rafael Dolis looked good. Shun Yamaguchi, I think. I said that name, and a lot of people probably just got upset even hearing it. Yamaguchi was never used, or is rarely used, in the right situation. And again, that's going to spark the market of, well, he's a Major League Baseball player. He should always be ready. Yeah, you got to put people in a place to succeed, right? And I think he got used in the mop-up role a lot, and I think that really affected him. And it's also his first year in America. Different ball, different everything, culturally. Like, could you imagine going across the country and, do your job at the most elite level that you can? or be scrutinized for it. It's pretty hard. It's not easy. And Yamaguchi had his moments where he looked good, and then he had a lot more moments where he looked bad, simply put. I think if you bring him back, well, they're going to bring him back, but if you put him in a place to succeed, I think in his second season, maybe he gets a little longer to work with the catchers and understand them, and they can understand his game better. I think we have a good reliever in Shun Yamaguchi, and I think the Blue Jays think the same way. So if they think like me, how can they be wrong? Right. But the bullpen's full of starters, obviously from last year. That was their biggest plan. AJ Cole still remains. But you look at guys like Thomas Hatch, Ryan Baracki, Patrick Murphy, Jacob Wagaspak, and Julian Merriweather. Are they going to stay in there as relievers? Or is AAA baseball and minor league baseball going to return next season? How are the Blue Jays going to handle that? And if they are, do you just go with the bullpen by committee like they had been? Or do you sign these bigger arms? Now, I think a guy like Blake Trenyon or Liam Hendricks. I think the Blue Jays, if you're smart, you go after them and you get that closer. Same as with the Trevor Bauer and the starter conversation, right? You get that ace in that spot. Yeah, I'll call Liam Hendricks an ace in the bullpen. And you kind of work your way back from there. It's like, okay, we've got the ninth inning covered. Eighth inning, Dolis or Romano. And then seventh is the other of them. AJ Cole's got the lefty option. And then you mix in a couple other guys. Whether you think Ryan Baracki, who performed well out of the bullpen, stays there. Or maybe you want to try to stretch him out again if there's a AAA season. Or if there isn't, then you leave guys like him, Julian Merriweather, Thomas Hatch, all these guys that I just said. You leave them in the bullpen, but you bring in that closer, that high-impact arm that you need. Maybe you bring back Anthony Bass, who performed. You just need that big arm there to make a big difference, and because it does strike fear into the other team. As stupid as that sounds, when you face the Yankees, you think, okay, going into the ninth inning, I got to roll this Chapman. Okay, so let's get our runs before then. We got the eighth inning. Oh, we got Zach Britton. Okay, well the seventh. Oh, we got Adam Ottavino, and it really works against teams quick. When they have that good bullpen and that good closer, it works against you quick, and it really hurts the offense. And I think that's what the Blue Jays need. They need that closer. They haven't had it since Roberto Osuna was performing at his highest levels in 15-16. He is a free agent this year. He's got elbow injuries, and I don't think any major league team wants to touch him. Houston kind of got scrutinized a lot for that, and that was only the foreshadowing of Houston getting scrutinized in baseball. They got in a lot of trouble, I'll say, from fans for signing or trading for Osuna, and I don't think anyone else is going to touch him with a 10-foot pole. On the position player side, though, with the Blue Jays, that's a bigger question because they've, like we've said, they've got their guys. They've got Vlad. They've got Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette. Behind the plate, they've got Danny Jansen, Reese McGuire, and Alejandro Kirk. Outfield, they've got Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Randall Grichuk, Teoscar Hernandez, Jonathan Davis. Like the list kind of, it's a decent-sized list there. And if you're the Blue Jays, what do you do there? Like, you've got your outfielders in those 4, even with Jonathan Davis. Do you go with that for another season, or do you maybe try to, improve it? Because there's guys out there on the market, obviously. Marcell Ozuna is the biggest fish right now. Had an amazing season with Atlanta. 18 home runs in 60 games. That's pretty good, right? He's probably going to get his payday this year. He's probably going to make $20 to $25 million. So if you're the Blue Jays, who Ozuna, he can play left and right field. I wouldn't want to try him in center. I think he's a little slower than Randall Grichuk. More of a Teoscar Hernandez kind of physique and playing style. I think he's better for the corners, and that's probably where he'll always play until he moves to DH eventually. But if you're the Blue Jays, do you need it at right and left fielder? Like, you've got Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and you've got Teoscar Hernandez. And in center field, you've got Randall Grichuk, who's better at left and right field. He's not a good center. He's a decent center fielder, but he's not a good one. Right? So then the move immediately becomes George Springer, who is easily the top fish for outfield free agents this year. 14 home runs, 51 games, 265 batting average, 899 OPS, which is on-base plus slugging, just in case you're wondering. Again, he's probably going to make $15, $25 million. He's probably going to want a 5 to 6 year contract. The question always comes back to, are the Toronto Blue Jays, a team who really hasn't spent money since the 2015-2016 playoffs, are they willing to spend money now? Right now, when you've got their young core, very cheap. Like the Blue Jays aren't paying jack squat for Vladimir Guerrero, the young core, instead of saying their name over and over again. They're not paying anything for them, really. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe. And they need to act on that right now because they're not going to get any cheaper. And eventually you're going to run out of arbitration years, and you're going to have to pay these guys big money. They have 3 more years of team control over Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 4 on Bo Bichette, 4 on Kevin Biggio, and 3 on Rowdy Tellez. So how are you going to utilize that and make sure that you win when the players are at their cheapest? It's kind of the Yankee style. You know, the Yankees really won when the guys like Jeter, Posada, Mariano Rivera were young, right? They won in their first couple seasons. And as they got older, we noticed that it was harder for the Yankees to win until they finally did in 09. That was a long time after Jeter debuted. I don't know if Blue Jays fans and Blue Jays, the organization, or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are ready to wait that long. And they shouldn't. Right now they can capitalize on it. Now, the perfect thing would be sign Trevor Bauer, sign George Springer, sign DJ LeMahieu, Liam Hendricks. There's 4 guys right there. There's your team. I think that would be a very good team. But I don't think you need to put all your eggs in one basket in this free agency. They need to make a big deal, and they need to make a splash, like I said. Whether that's Trevor Bauer, Liam Hendricks, or someone Liam Hendricks-esque, and George Springer. Or Michael Brantley's the latest name they've been tied to, but again, that's a left or right fielder. So then who plays center field? Is it Lourdes Gurriel Jr. or is it Randall Grichuk? As soon as you introduce a new outfielder, where's that 4th guy going? Because they've got, right now they've got 3 guys who can play the Major League game between Lourdes, Randall, and Teoscar. So who moves out of there and where do they go? DH? That's where Vlad and Rowdy Tellez split time. Or do they not have a third baseman, so Vladdy moves over there, or do they re-sign Travis Shaw? There's a lot of decisions here for the Toronto Blue Jays. The 2 guys that I looked at the most for the Blue Jays, George Springer would be amazing. I don't think he's going to sign in Toronto, and I don't know if Toronto wants him. Cast aside the Houston cheating scandal, not even scandal, the Houston cheating, it's a scandal, the problems that they had and the cheating that they did. Cast that aside, George Springer is an older guy, a lot of miles, and I don't know how he's going to play on that turf. I just don't know how it's going to work in Toronto, so maybe you don't choose him and you go to the team that just won, who has 2 free agent outfielders who they're probably going to lose in Jock Peterson, who they tried to trade in the Mookie Betts deal, and Enrique Hernandez, who can also play the infield. Jock last year, 7 home runs, 43 games, 190 batting average. That hurts to read, but he's a good player, and he performed well in the World Series. Probably going to have to give him $10 to $20 million over 4 to 6 years. Or Enrique Hernandez had 5 home runs, a 230 batting average over 48 games. He also performed well. I think you could get him cheaper. I think you could get him to $8 to $14 million on a 2 to 6 year deal. So if you're the Blue Jays, do you want that big? Do you want to spend big in the outfield, or do you spend big in the infield and starting rotation? Because I'm going off the idea you're spending big in starting rotation and in the bullpen, 1 arm at least in the bullpen, and then you put it in the infield. You look at the infield, up the middle right now, they're set pretty much with Bo Bichette and Kevin Biggio. That's is if you trust Bichette at shortstop. So who do you put at third base? Is it Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who kind of performed better at first base but didn't? He kind of doesn't look like a great defensive player. What do you do? They've been tied to Justin Turner, who obviously had his scandal this offseason with the COVID-19 positive tests, and is getting up there, but still hit 4 home runs last year in 42 games, 307 batting average, right? Like, he's going to get his hits, and he's going to get his home runs in a full season. Is that who you want in Toronto? He's an older guy, World Series caliber veteran to lead these young guys, 35, right? So do you want him in Toronto at third base for 1 to 3 years? Probably going to have to pay him $10 to $15 million. Or maybe you look at third base and go, okay, well, let's not fill third base. Let's fill another position, whether so you bring in a guy like DJ LeMahieu. Obviously, the big fish this year. Led the league with batting average of a 3.64 batting average with a 1.011 OPS, which is amazing. And you bring him in, you put him at second, and you move Kevin Biggio from second to third. They could do a lot with Kevin Biggio. They kind of put him everywhere. And I think if Biggio can perform at third, you leave Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first. Whatever they do here, let's counter with this. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. needs to stay at one position. You can't flip-flop him back and forth because that doesn't help with his development. He is only 21. He's a 21, soon-to-be 22-year-old, I believe. You can't move him around positions and expect him to perform. Kevin Biggio is 25, so I'm not contradicting myself. But Vladdy needs to eventually develop at a position, and they need to decide, is that third base or is that first base? And I think this is the year. I've really turned this year into a tell-all for the Blue Jays, but I think it is. They need to decide right now, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. a first or a third baseman, and let him stay there. Of course, days with injury and stuff like that, you can switch positions, but that shouldn't keep happening. Keep him at first, in my opinion. Then you could bring in a guy like DJ LeMahieu or Colton Wong, who the St. Louis Cardinals just released. Maybe you bring in a shortstop like Marcus Semien, Andrelton Simmons, and you either convince them to play second base, or then they only play shortstop like Didi Gregorius was going to do when the Blue Jays were after him before he signed with the Phillies 2 years ago. You bring them in, they play shortstop. Then you have to move Bo Bichette from short to second, Kevin Biggio from second to third, and you leave Vlad at first. That's a lot of moving parts. I don't know if the Blue Jays are fully set on Bo Bichette moving off of shortstop yet. I think they really want to see what he can do at the short position. In my personal opinion, I don't think Bo Bichette is a MLB caliber shortstop. He does a very good job at short. We saw it this last season. And I'm not basing this off of the kind of bad postseason he had at the position. But he just, I don't know if he overreacts to stuff or he just doesn't look comfortable at shortstop. And I think he would look a lot better at second base or maybe third base if he's got a better arm than Biggio. If the Blue Jays see that, if Biggio doesn't improve his arm more, maybe you put Bichette at third and Biggio stays at second. But then you got to bring in a shortstop. So whether that's Gregorius or Andrelton Simmons, or the guys who they're talked about training for, Travis Story or Francisco Lindor, who we'll get to in a minute. The last idea that I had kind of had for improving the Blue Jays is behind the dish, and that's with the catching position. They've got Danny Jansen, they've got Reese McGuire, and Alejandro Kirk. Those are the catchers right now of the future. The thing is, are they the catchers of the future? Like, very good players, but they haven't really, none of them other than Alejandro Kirk, who's performed well in a very small sample size. I think the Blue Jays maybe need to move on from one of Danny Jansen or Reese McGuire. And that's not only because they're not good, because they're decent MLB players, right? But they just haven't shown it yet. Danny Jansen can perform behind the plate. He just can't perform at it while batting, right? Reese McGuire is kind of the same way, but less. He's not as good defensively. So maybe move on from Reese McGuire. And I think they bring in a guy like Kurt Suzuki or Jeff Mathis, who can help develop young pitchers at pitching, obviously. And they're not going to bring a lot offensively. And you know what? With a team that has a good offense like this, I don't know if you need that. Now, the only reason you want Danny Jansen to perform better at offensively is because his defensive capabilities and pitch calling isn't at an elite enough yet level that you can kind of just cast aside the offense, which you can with like a Jeff Mathis, who is widely regarded as one of the best pitch callers in the entire MLB. So you would sign a guy like him to like $3 or $5 million, and you kind of go, okay, he's going to give us this year he had 10 hits over 24 games. You're okay with that. That's a 161 batting average. You go into that, you're like, that's what we're going to get, but he's going to call the best game of anyone else in the majors right now. Because I don't see the Blue Jays going after JT Realmuto, who is the top catching free agent. I don't think there's a need for the Blue Jays right now to get a guy like that. Not until you see what Danny Jansen, Reese McGuire, and even Alejandro Kirk can do, right? Like, you see what these guys can do behind the plate in a full season, and then you make your decision. But I think signing a veteran catcher wouldn't be the worst idea. We saw it with Caleb Joseph, right? The veteran presence he brought behind the plate, and even in the locker room. It never hurts with young guys to have more veteran voices as long as they're the right ones. That's the big reason why they got rid of Marcus Stroman, right? He was a veteran voice. Some people liked him, but was he the most positive in their clubhouse? I don't think. That's why they moved him, right? I don't think he was. Now, free agency isn't the only way to improve this team, And the Blue Jays have been tied to one big trade that is projected to happen this offseason, and that is for Francisco Lindor from the Cleveland Indians, who Lindor has become one of the superstars in the major leagues ever since he joined the major leagues. He's played 5 seasons with the Indians. He's an elite defender at short, an elite hitter. Didn't really show it last season. He had a 258 batting average, but he's a 285 hitter, which he just flipped 8 in the 5, and he's got an 833 OPS. That's a very good hitter, right? And that's the guy you want at shortstop. He's got elite defense, Gold Gloves, or at least Gold Glove caliber, and would really shore up the Blue Jays' defensive problems that they had last season, because they look like a little league team out there. They did, honestly. Between Bo Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and the rotating cast they had in there while Bo Bichette was hurt, they didn't look good. And I think if you can get a guy like Francisco Lindor, he can help improve the entire team's defense by being in a class example that they should follow. Countering that, I don't think the Toronto Blue Jays should acquire Francisco Lindor. It sounds like Cleveland's ask. I know a lot of people just slam their keyboards, but we'll play through this. Cleveland's ask are a young outfielder and prospects, or a higher prospect, right? So if you're the Blue Jays and you're looking at your outfield, you're like, okay, our young outfielders that they would want in return, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Ooh, are you going to make that trade? It would hurt to lose Lourdes Gurriel Jr., so then you really need to sign an outfielder in free agency. Are they going to want to do that? Because the big thing with Francisco Lindor is when you trade for him, he's got 1 more year, and then he's a free agent. So you're going to have to pay him big money, and it's sounding like $30 to $35 million over 6 to 10 years. Are you going to pay Francisco Lindor $350 million? Are you willing to do that? If you're the Blue Jays, then make the deal. Because that's really the only way any team, not even just the Blue Jays, any team should not acquire, or I guess no team should acquire Francisco Lindor unless they're willing to pay him his extension, which is probably going to be around $330 or $350 million. I think he's going to get his 10-year deal. He's only 26, so I'd take him until he's 36. That's a very good deal, and we've seen stuff like deals that length recently with Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, and Bryce Harper. It's the new way of doing it, right? Manny Machado got the same to sign with San Diego. So if you're the Blue Jays, you're going to move on from Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Okay, he's gone. See you, Lourdes. And then you need to attach a prospect to that. And the Blue Jays, for prospects, they've graduated, right? We've seen the young guys have graduated right now. Nate Pearson's barely considered a prospect. So then you're looking at who do you want to give up? And it sounds like they don't want pitching prospects. Cleveland can draft pitching well. So you're looking at 2 guys, in my opinion. They're not going to trade Austin Martin, who they just drafted this year, 5th overall. It's probably going to be Logan Warmoth or Jordan Groshans, who are both pretty young. Warmoth is 22. He's 25. He was taken 22nd overall in the 2017 draft. And you're looking at Jordan Groshans, who was taken 12th overall in the 2018 draft and is 20 years old. What a young kid, eh? 20 years old? Wow. So if you're the Blue Jays, do you want to move on from these prospects, or is Cleveland even going to want them? I mean, you're looking to the future. Austin Martin is projecting to be a shortstop or third baseman, and he looks good. He's looked good so far in college at Vanderbilt, but how's he going to look in Toronto once he starts playing minor league baseball and eventually major league? Is he going to fit in that shortstop, third baseman role? Or are guys like Jordan Groshans and Logan Warmoth, are they closer? Are you ready to move on from them yet? But if you're the Blue Jays, and if that's all it takes, maybe it's both of them and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. You look at that and it's like, okay, do we want Francisco Lindor? Because then you have to make a decision. Where's Bo Bichette going to play? Is he going to play second base? Then Biggio, there's a lot of decisions there. And that goes the same with the Colorado Avalanche's Trevor Story, who's also up to be traded right now. Colorado hasn't performed well in a couple of years. Their manager has said to their fans that we need to move on. Not move on. We need to change something this offseason. Drastic changes are coming. And it sounds like they're looking to trade either Trevor Story or their franchise third baseman, Nolan Arenado. I was kind of pushing that off, but we'll get to Nolan Arenado. And I don't know if the Blue Jays are ready to trade for a shortstop. It never hurts. Trevor Story, like Francisco Lindor, is going to be a free agent after this season. So I don't know how you approach that one. You're going to have to re-sign him, obviously. Trevor Story has performed well In his 5 seasons in the Major League, he has 134 home runs with an 877 OPS. That's really good. That's a good hitter. So, and he can play defense well. So do you sign Trevor Story and Francisco Lindor, trade for them, give up your young prospects and your young outfielder? Lots of decisions for the Blue Jays. Another guy who they've been tied to and I think would be the biggest cost, but would be the biggest addition to the Blue Jays would be Nolan Arenado from the Avalanche. He is 29, under contract through 2026. But, and the biggest of buts, because it's probably going to happen, he has a player option in 2021, which means he can opt out and sign for more money or opt in and stay with through his contract through 2026. Good chance he opts out and signs somewhere else. Or you trade for him and then you worry, is he going to stay with us or is he going to opt out and try to get more money from us or another team? And if you're the Blue Jays, Nolan Arenado is the franchise third baseman you thought you had in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And that's not me saying Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not going to be a franchise player for the Blue Jays. We just know Nolan Arenado can play defense. He just won his 8th straight Gold Glove and almost won Platinum Player Defender of the Year. He is an elite third baseman. He's probably the best third baseman in the major leagues right now. Chris Bryant has kind of fell off. Is that the guy you want to go after? Because it's going to be more than Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Logan Warmoth or Jordan Groshans. It might include Austin Martin, right? Like, this is the guy in Colorado, and they're going to ask for the next guy. So if you're Toronto, are you willing to offer up Austin Martin or your young pitching prospects in Simeon Woods Richardson, who is the second-ranked prospect in the Toronto organization, or Alex Manoah, who you took 11th overall in the 2019 draft? These young starters that look to project to be a part of your rotation in the future. Is that who you're willing to give up to bring in a guy like Nolan Arenado? If you're the Blue Jays, you have to make that decision, and I think this is the year to do it. Arenado would be an amazing addition for the Blue Jays. It would really shore up the position they need to fill. You've got Arenado at third, Bo Bichette at short, Kevin Biggio at second, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Rowdy Tellez at first. What a team. What a lineup. And then your outfield, you maybe try to improve on it, or maybe you've traded at least one of them. But you've got Randall Grichuk there, and one of Teoscar Hernandez or Lourdes Gurriel Jr., because the other one probably had to go the other way. That's a very good team, and it immediately improves the defense, it improves the offense. And I guess the biggest question now with the trade and with free agency with the Toronto Blue Jays is, are they willing to make these moves and commit to this roster right now? Because they did very little bit with Hyunjin Ryu last year. This year, there's a lot of big fish that are available that can help the Blue Jays turn themselves from playoff maybes into playoff contenders into World Series contenders. A lot of big fishes out there. A lot of big decisions to make. And I guess just the biggest questions left is, are the Blue Jays ready to fish this year?